What's up, everyone? If you do not know me, my name is Denzel Mensah. I'm an ENFJ 911 social sexual in the Myers Briggs and Enneagram system. I'm also a certified life, personal development, and relationship coach. And today I have with me three INTJ anomalies that we're going to be talking about. It's going to be the first in this series of the anomalies of the Myers Briggs types. So, yeah, I hope that you guys enjoy this one, and let's go. First off, I would like for each of them to introduce themselves, and maybe just tell us a little bit about, what you currently do and just anything that you find interesting, starting with Lauren.
Wow. Okay. Hi, my name is Lauren. What I do, I am an ICU pharmacist in a high acuity center. I also have some leadership roles there. What I really like reading, philosophizing, talking with friends, going to concerts. My recent hyperfixation has been rock climbing, but I really like being active. So soccer, hiking, backpacking. I am
Uh,
probably missing something. That's kind of me.
Probably. And then you, Kirsten.
I'm Kierstyn, and right now I work as a clinical imaging specialist, so just doing breast ultrasound screenings and in the process of getting ready to apply to medical school this year. In my free time, if I can say that, I also am very active. I love hiking, Pilates classes, hot yoga classes, long walks. I also feel like I'm just a chatty person and love going out to dinner and just catching up with friends and things like that. Um, and also just talking, just in general, like about random things and getting into conversations with people. So
Awesome. And then last but definitely not least, Dario.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dario. And what do? I guess I'm an author. I did teach for a long time and I still use, I guess, those teaching skills to do workshops. And I do some consulting and technical stuff. What do I enjoy doing in my free time? I don't know what that is. Not working. I enjoy a lot of the work that I do, but what's a nice break is either something like music, making music, or going to a club or something like that. Although I haven't been out in a while. Physical stuff. I really love hiking. I love taking a break. Even today, I was just like, it's a beautiful day. The cherry blossoms are out. I'm just gonna walk to the market and walk back. Like, it's lovely. I enjoy swimming in the summer. I enjoy going to the gym, especially running. Come from a family of runners, so there's that. And I said making music. Yeah, I like that. So I mean, I have lots of weird hobbies, and I also love going out to dinner with friends and talking about weird stuff and interesting stuff, like whatever it is. I used to be a big reader when I was young, but I really actually feel guilty when I'm reading now, because I'm like, this is too slow and I have to be using my time for other things. Yeah, so that's me right now. And I love to travel. I do a lot of work travel combo stuff.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. So already, just from the three of them introducing themselves, many people watching who maybe are just new to Myers-Briggs or like are only familiar with the stereotypes that are online, which we're going to get to in a bit. Probably, oh my goodness, wait, swimming? Isn't that, an SE thing, or like why are they like hiking and stuff like that? And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this series, because I think that there's I mean, I might not use the word completely correctly, but it's one of Lauren's favorite words. There's like a liminal space, or just a fine line between people who don't look like the stereotype of their personality type, but yet they're still using their cognitive functions of in that stacking, which is pretty much to identify that, okay, you are indeed that personality type. You just use it in a different way versus people who just actually, they don't look like the type because they're just not that personality type. And I would say that as somebody who, pretty much profiles people like all the time and has been learning about Myers-Briggs for years. And then on top of that, I've known you guys for a long time as well. And then being familiar with Dario's subtypes, which we're going to be talking about a little bit as well too. I can definitely say for sure that all three of you are INTJs. But if I were new to type, then there's definitely a lot of things that even you guys haven't mentioned yet that I'd be like, oh, well, wouldn't an INTJ like not do that? Like, so maybe some of the stereotypes that I would know of is like, oh, INTJs, especially when you watch them like on television or something, are just they don't smile and they're very like cynical and they're just, just plotting the whole time, the mastermind behind everything, always, all the time. And I've found that to not really fully be true. I have met some right, not fully, exactly. I've met some INTJs that are pretty inexpressive, I guess I would say. And it's like, okay, but then even then, like I wouldn't necessarily think like, oh, well, they have no heart or something like that. But then I meet people such as Lauren, who even just this morning, like me and her, like, we're on Snapchat and everything, and all she does is smile. Like she has smile lines from just constantly smiling all the time. And she's such yeah, like one of the reasons why I chose Lauren, for example, to be on in this video, and each of you are going to get this kind of spiel before you go, just so just so you're aware. But for Lauren especially, even though I'm certain that she's an INTJ, although sometimes she questions it herself, the two things that mainly stand out about her is like how kind and affectionate she is, and like pretty much like expressive in that sense, while also being a very sociable person, in my opinion. Like Lauren is plugged into the personality hacker group chats. I remember that we've been in profiler training courses with personality hacker for like years, and you were always plugged into the groups. You weren't like hissing at people and just constantly trying to like get your alone time or anything. And you were pretty warm with everyone. And even when yeah, like, and I feel like that's something that if somebody was really trying to live up to an INTJ stereotype, these are things that like they would absolutely try to have a front on, like, oh well, I'm not so sure, I don't want to engage with people. So starting with you, Lauren, like in what ways would you say that in addition to the things I've already like mentioned, or just to elaborate on that you kind of diverge from what an INTJ stereotype looks like? And if you even can also describe a little bit about what like an INTJ stereotype is to you.
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned is the pretty overt answer, which is that I try to be expressive. I actively try to move myself toward sharing my experience, my emotions, elucidating that in others as well. I'm really drawn toward, I don't know, I don't want to say like vulnerability, but people being transparent and sharing themselves, and I like learning about others. And I think what has colored this for me is that I have an ESFJ older sister, who's very much been a model my entire life, and very expressive. She's the kind of person where at every holiday she's hugging every single person, makes every single person feel like they're important, and then when she leaves, says goodbye to every single person and hugs them, and I'm like, that's doing the most. But I think it did highlight for me that FE is effective and impactful too. There's a beauty to it as well, and in observing it. So I think that's sort of the background. As far as how else, I mean, I was very athletic growing up. I played multiple sports like soccer, basketball, golf. I competed in taekwondo. And I will say there's a threshold. I mean, there's a plateau. Certainly, probably not going to get to an Olympic level, although was at a national level. And I very much attribute that to almost my inability to fully be present. To me, it's like a pattern. And even when I would be throwing basketball or throwing free throws in basketball, I'd be like, what's the specific pattern every time? And I was trying to mimic that, where I'm sure some people just kind of naturally do it. It's kind of hard to put myself in that position. But I think on the surface, that looks very abnormal. And so I try to be somewhat kinesthetically aware. And I even try to actively be like aware as well in my general surroundings, but not always successfully. So that's kind of typical.
Got you. Yeah, that's actually really helpful, because then for those who, again, might be wondering like, oh, well, then how would an SE inferior, for example, like operate in this sense? Like what, like all of these sports, national, etc. I think an explanation could be exactly like you're somebody who's self-aware enough to know, oh, well, when I'm throwing a free, like when I'm doing a free throw, this is actually how I'm approaching it versus, you know, hypothetically, maybe an ESFP or ESTP of some sort, how they might approach that.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
I was just going to say, I used to have an ESFP Taekwondo coach who would basically just be like, just do what I do. I'm like, I can't just do what you do. I need to understand the mechanism behind it. I don't know. I can't just do. But it's very obvious to an SE user to just copy me.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And then you also said, you know, how, oh, you saw that FE is effective. And of course, like noticing that you said that you try to be more affectionate or expressive and everything. If you have an answer for that, like how much of that would you say is effort that's put into that because you're like, oh, well, this is effective to TE get to a certain goal versus, oh, like this is really quote unquote just who I am? Or would you like answer in a different kind of way? Like, because for me, I always describe you as, at least in my experience, like the most affectionate INTJ that I know. And that's even not to say that necessarily like, oh yeah, she's the absolute 1000% most affectionate person ever. You know, like there's difference there, but you don't seem like somebody who withholds love, withholds a laugh, withholds expression or affection in a way. And of course you have people who you're closer with in that sense, but even then, like, I feel like everybody still like experiences a level of warmth from you. And so is that all TE trained from the ESFJ sister for a certain goal? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a good clarification. I think when I was younger, it was difficult for me, like, because there was a part of me that was genuinely sort of fearful, didn't like when people, I don't know, I was very sort of stereotypically invulnerable, didn't like when people like knew my emotions. If I was crying, I would go to my room and hide alone, kind of thing. And I think, I don't know, there was this point in my life where I started to think about like, okay, I can approach life in two different ways. Like one, I can entirely protect myself and never let anyone come in. And that's a very reasonable way to live. People do get hurt when people get close. But if I'm poised with that position versus like living life fully and expressively and having people and sharing like love with, and capital L love with, and risking breaking my heart, I'm going to choose that every single time. And that was just my choice. It's very reasonable for somebody to choose the opposite. And so it is genuine, like the expressiveness, the love, the care and concern. But I think the emergent is not evidence of something that happened overnight. It was a long process of me trying to come to terms with that. So it's not just TE effective, it's authentic, but it's confronting fear as well.
For sure. No, I appreciate that answer. And then my last question, at least for right now, what got you into all of the sports and active things that you do? Like even when, if somebody were to visit your Instagram, like somebody could probably confuse you stereotypically for an ISTP. Like, like so much like soccer stuff or
Yeah.
Taekwondo, or I remember there was one where like you were literally like in the mud and you're kind
Oh,
of
the
like,
obstacle course racing. Yeah. Yeah.
what is all of this? Like, where'd that come from?
That's a good question. I just like movement. And my sister initially, like, she played soccer when she was 3. And so in seeing that, I was like, that looks fun. I like to move and I want to be athletic. And I think there's also part of me that has just had, and I think this is more nature, maybe some nurture, but I just have this fixation on I want to be better, stronger, more alive. And whatever has induced that experience, I've moved myself toward.
Nice.
And I particularly like when something feels just out of reach because it gives me something to work for and toward. And that's kind of athletics and what it was for me.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime.
So I know that right off the bat, you described yourself as a chatty person before I even got to you. So pretty much kind of like what I say about Lauren. For Kierstyn, she's someone who I would often describe as the most talkative INTJ that I know. I've gotten to know Kierstyn extremely deeply, and to me, there's no doubt that INTJ is the personality type that she is. And then the friends that I also have that are mutual with her and that I've gotten to know her on a deep level, they're like, oh yeah, like I remember one time Kierstyn, well, there was a few times where Kierstyn was having like a little MBTI identity crisis. It's like, oh my gosh, like, am I this? And then we had to like reevaluate and all that. And we tried to attack it from like every single angle. And even Jamila is like, come on now. Like, this is the girl who, when she came for your birthday, like she barely moved in this way. And she like Jamila, I mean, I can't really like express like all the ways in which like Jamila was like breaking it down. But she's like, yeah, no, that's definitely an INTJ. And also, even when you two like planned my birthday party, she spoke about like how like she had the ideas, and Jamila's an ISFP for those who might not know, my wife. But yeah, like Jamila had the ideas and everything, and then she would try to like implement them. And I think that Jamila has really good TE for an ISFP. Like it's gotten better over the years. Like she has a really great relationship with it, especially now. And she really taps into it through that SE. But from my understanding of how that, you know, everything went with my birthday being planned and everything, it was Kierstyn who really like got all of the efficiency down with that and everything. And I feel like, you know, the types that people would probably confuse you for, it's like, well, if we really examine like how you move, especially like on a day-to-day basis, then it's to me, it's like you wouldn't really necessarily fit ENFP/INFP or whatever other type that, you know, people might try to like pin on you, ENTP, etc. Kierstyn's also somebody who is always planning. In fact, too much, in my opinion. And I'm the one who has to like, you know what, like you don't have to think about that right now. You should probably like take it like day by day and everything. And she
Happened to me last night.
yes. And so with you, obviously, I guess my first question would be, why would you say that you are an INTJ that just happens to be chatty, like to talk a lot? Which even then, your own family said that they would not describe you as chatty. So then that's also a caveat that comes into play.
Yeah. It's very interesting because when I think about myself, when I was younger, I wasn't necessarily always chatty, and I feel like that developed over time. Part of it, I think similar to what Lauren said about her ESFJ sister, my mom's ISFJ, and I notice how like she observes people's conversation and dynamic with others. And so I think for me, like my sister's actually an ENFP, and she is selectively chatty. Like you're either going to get one version where you can't get a word in, or someone who's very reserved, and it's almost like what do they call, what's this, I don't even know what the analogy is that I'm thinking of, but you're like pulling teeth essentially. And so I noticed like my mom would always harp on how it was like pulling teeth or things. It was difficult sometimes to engage and things like that. And then same thing with my brother, like the feedback, I think when I was younger that we received, it seemed like, okay, this is not this isn't a good thing. So I feel like I started to focus more on communication to the point where like I majored in communication studies in college. And I also like, our whole world, like it's very important to be able to be social and communicate with others. But also like internally, I think with people who get to know me personally, that's when I always kind of come out and I am more chatty as we develop more of like a deeper relationship, and then I am able to just share more about myself. But just on a regular level of people that I would meet, I think I used to come off maybe a little bit more, I won't say awkward, I don't think I was ever awkward, but definitely more reserved. Even I laugh because I feel like I see myself as like a yapper is what I'll say. And like you said, my family is like, you're not really a yapper. Like you can talk, but everything that you say like means something. Like it has a lot of depth. And if you're don't have anything to say, like you're not going to say anything. And then my closest friends, it's just funny to me to hear their first impressions of me. And I laugh because in their first impressions of me and seeming like I all mysterious and like reserved, and I wasn't necessarily the warmest person, where I'm like, oh, that's so funny because I feel like everyone would describe me as, when they know me, as somebody that's like really warm, friendly, and things like that. But that's not always the first impression that I give, which kind of does land more within the stereotype. But it's just interesting because, again, it's so context dependent, where I think if I'm meeting friends that are friends of mine, again, I'm in that context where I almost like, I know how I'm going to show up in that way, versus like, honestly, I was in the grocery store yesterday and I actually was feeling a little awkward because I was in line and the person behind me gave me a compliment on my hair and was like, oh, your hair looks really good. And I was just like, and I feel like I was just so quick and was like, oh, thank you. And then I overthought that interaction. I was like, oh, I feel like that was kind of rude. So I felt like the need to continue to try to talk. And I've noticed myself trying to bring out traits of my mom as I've gotten older, like especially like I give this example, if I'm going to a restaurant that I've gone to frequently where I've seen that person's face all the time, my mom's the type of person that's always like, oh, how's your day going? Oh, I see you all the time, and this and that, like as if she knows the person. I'm like, you don't know that person. But I recognize like, oh wow, that like they are happy to be recognized and things like that. And I'm like, oh wow, like she really does know a little bit of something. So I've learned to force myself. It feels really unnatural for me, but I've learned to just make that effort and try to do that with strangers. And I'm like, oh wow, that worked out well, and I didn't make a fool of myself. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And it's interesting too to even bring that up, because even with your mother being an ISFJ, like that's also something where it's like, oh wow, so an introvert, and again with the stereotype things like, oh, talking to somebody just like out there. So I feel like that again like shows like how much nuance goes into these types, and then even just how our upbringing can affect that. And the people that like we see, and then like kind of what Lauren said, like, oh, that works. Like me being married to an ISFP, I definitely have seen over the past over 10 years that we've known each other, like how FI really works. And I think almost 80% of my closest friends are FI users. And so it's like, oh yeah, I've very much seen how much like FI works on a day-to-day, and like that's taught me a lot as well. So I think that's cool. And then yes, with Kierstyn especially, I would also say like, so if I'm describing Lauren, for example, as like the most affectionate INTJ that I know, then aside from like obviously like the most talkative, like Kierstyn is like the most friendly INTJ that I know. And the reason why like I would distinguish affectionate from friendly is because even then Kierstyn still has, in my opinion, like a little bit of a detachment or distance from her. And I feel like when you like to talk, Kierstyn, it's a lot of like either like you talk a lot of TE stuff. like if people are really talking to you, it's like you're planning this, or like, how can I get you to also accomplish this? Or like, oh, well, what we can do is do this. And like, and so you're kind of pushing in that way. And you're not necessarily like cold or mean from my experience at all. But I have noticed that, like, maybe compared to some others, then like, okay, like if somebody like throws affection on you, it might take you a moment to kind of like, oh, what do I do with this? But you're not like somebody who just swats at it, like maybe like a stereotype INTJ might, or like just kind of stoically like lets it bounce off of you. But it's just a quick like, oh shoot, I wasn't expecting that. And then you kind of like nervously throw it back, like, oh, love you too, or something like that. And then it's like, all right, now let's get back to the NT stuff. And I feel like that's why, like, I would still say, the most friendly, because at the same time, you are somebody who I also feel is, I would say, even though Lauren, in my perception, is like community oriented, for you, I see you as someone who is always like, not like you're always having like a one-on-one with somebody. Like, oh, I have a phone call with this friend. Okay, I'm going out to dinner with this friend. Okay, this friend has invited me to come and do this with them. And then at the same time, you're finding time to still pursue your vision and your dream through all of this. And so I find that to be interesting, because you have a very nuanced and particular vision that you're constantly chipping away at. And as you're constantly chipping away at that vision, then I noticed how it's almost like the people that you have to meet up with can kind of be like distractions. Like, oh, I have to study for my exam, or I have to like do this, but so and so invited me, and it's usually like them like initiating. So I think that's also something where like so and so invited me to like go and see them, and I haven't responded to their message in like 2 months, so yeah, I should probably go and see them. How would you describe that experience for yourself?
Yeah, it's funny. I almost conglomerate good TE as also being able to make that space and time for people. I almost feel like if you can't find time to also nurture your relationships, you don't really have great time management. So that's kind of how I see it. So I think I'm not really great with last minute things. So as long as somebody, and luckily a lot of my friends are SJs, NJs, or all FEs. There's SFJs and NFJs really. So luckily I don't have too much of that every now and then. But even so, I think that's an area where I've learned to become more flexible, and not everything's like, I think of myself just as like, okay, this is my plan. And I'm not always thinking about if someone reaches out to me on this day or whatever. So I've learned to make open space in a way where I'm not blocking my whole day or schedule up, where it's like, oh no, this ruined my plan because I wasn't expecting this person to reach out to me. So it gives me that flexibility to be like, I did everything that I need to do. And if I have that extra time, I can actually get started and do more. And then if not, it's fine, because I'm like, I actually already blocked that out for these individuals. So I think I kind of think of my relationship dynamics, I organize it in a TE way. Because also I think, I recognize that I have a strong work ethic and everything, but I think maybe this is like an FE fear of mine. But sometimes, especially as I know, like I'm going to go to med school, and once I'm in med school, I already know like it's going to be very difficult and I'm going to be very like locked in. And so I feel like to some degree, I'm like maintaining these relationships and nurturing them. So I'm like, when I'm not talking to you guys for 4 years, don't be mad at me. Like, don't be upset with me. And like, I'm banking on like everyone will understand what I'm doing and they'll be there when I'm out, type of thing. So, so yeah, I feel like I put a lot of my time and effort as much as I can equally into those relationships, because I know that I really won't be able to have the time to do what I'm doing right now in the future.
Interesting. And I think that my final question, which is actually going to go to all three of you, Lauren is having technical difficulties, but I see her still in the studio, so she's probably going to get that figured out and she can hear it. Nonetheless, my question for you now is, like, you mentioned how you use your TE to like make pockets in space for people. And I would like to know, like, if, you know, I'm again like going from the stereotype like of the INTJ who can just isolate themselves from humanity for their whole entire life and just create this master grand plan that they will probably never actualize because they're just spending so much time and I thinking about it or whatever, and it has nothing to do with people, you know, stuff like that. Like, my question then is, what makes you, all three of you, like care about people? Like, why care about relationships and people? And yeah, like what do you get from that?
Yeah, I think for me, it's interesting because I mean, I'm sure you're gonna touch upon these things, so I don't want to speak too soon, but I do think that people underestimate tertiary FI, perhaps, and maybe this idea of like a TE user not caring so much about like people's experiences other than their own, I don't necessarily think is true. I do think for me, it's different than I can recognize like a lot of wrongs in the world or things going on, but it doesn't mean I'm going to try to go and solve everything. It does sometimes have to be more like a bit on a personal level, I guess, for me to truly hone in on it. So even within like healthcare and my interests, it was experience that happened to me that illuminated how much is happening to other people, that it creates a level of empathy of realizing all the other people in the world that are just like you or have the same experience, that my approach is helping people first, but my approach around doing it is not I wouldn't say like it's in FE way, but it's a lot of tackling, I think, systems that in the end help like everyone personally. And I think that can also get confused with if you're not directly just working on like the sciencey thing or the systemic thing and not looking at people while you're doing that. I don't understand how you can disconnect from the relationship with humans and what you're doing and how it doesn't impact humans or how it does. So I always see the two having to be together. And so you just can't have one without the other. So you have to look at both. And so with that being said, it's somewhat all woven together where I am always thinking about people and I'm always listening to see like what other gaps are there or what other barriers are there and how can we connect these things in a way where I'm not trying to expend all my energy into one person at a time, saving the world and seeing how we can get it all done. Like, I guess in like, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah.
I mean, you kind of just did. Yeah,
Yeah.
That's really great. And then also, I said that was the last question, but the actual last thing I did want to touch on before we move on to Dario is, like Lauren, and also like Dario, you are somebody who I view as very active as well, in the sense that like you also played soccer, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And you know, you also have an affinity for style. You know, that's something that, you know, might not be as popular for INTJs and everything with the SE inferior. And then on top of that, you are just somebody who likes to like, you will definitely spend a lot of time thinking through stuff and everything, but at the same time you have found ways to push past that and finally like pull the trigger and like get stuff done. And so yeah, I'm curious, like how would you describe that relationship with like sports and everything? Were you good at the sports? You know, did you enjoy it? Were you forced with gunpoint to jump into that? You know, how was that for you?
Yeah, it's funny. SI demon over here. I'm having a hard time looking back. But I do remember my dad just being very specific about all of us needed to learn how to play an instrument and get involved in a sport. So it was like a requirement for sure. It was like nobody's getting away with it. My dad is INTJ. And so this is funny because like he actually was super into sports and he always says like, you know, my first goal was to be an NFL player or a baseball player. And after, if that couldn't work, I wanted to be a fighter jet pilot, but I didn't have 20/20 vision. So I ended up being a general surgeon. And I'm like, oh, wow. But he always was just kind of like, you got to play a sport. I don't care what sport it is. You got to get involved in a sport. And so my brother and sister played baseball and softball. I thought it was so boring. So I ended up picking up soccer, and I absolutely loved soccer. I played soccer from like kindergarten up until my junior year of high school. And then I switched to rugby because I thought that was like really cool. And so I started playing rugby, which is like even more intense than soccer. But similarly to something that Lauren mentioned is funny, because when I played soccer, I think part of the reason I liked it was almost the like more coaching standpoint of predicting what plays or moves might be coming from the opposing team. And I didn't really think about, like, obviously I wasn't like into personality type then. So I wasn't really thinking about other people not thinking that way. So for me, I would almost try to pattern the person that I'm going up against and seeing what they consistently do. So then I'd be like, okay, they got me that first time, but I know that this is what they like to do. So I remember I knew like, okay, I'm going to get close to them, but I know that they're going to pass it to this person next. So and I was pretty fast. So I was like, I'm going to run over before the other person can get it. And so I would do stuff like that where it'd be like, oh my gosh, how did you know like they're going to go that way or do that? And I was like, well, I started noticing like their pattern or whatever. So I was actually using NI, I guess, when I was playing soccer, but it was working with like SE and everything. So I really enjoyed it because I found it like it was more so in a way of what are you going to do next? How are you going to try to get to the goal? I think as a almost like literally, I don't want to say like chess because that sounds so stereotypical. Like it sounds so stereotypical, but like it really was in a way thinking about their literal next pass to the player or their next move. And I think that's what I enjoyed about it. And also like I was pretty fast. So even like I would like to run down and go back and forth. I was playing midfields a lot and forwards. So yeah, there's that. Rugby, man, I don't even know how I can say how I really got interested in deciding to do that. I think I was so fed up with, I had to, again, my parents really, because my sister, she did the cotillion. And I was like, I do not want to do this. Like, I am not being a debutante. And it was like one of those things. And my mom, ISFJ, was like, well, your sister did it and your brother was going to do it. So now it's you to do it type of thing. And this is a funny thing because this is where I realized the SE inferior comes out for me with dancing. So we literally had a dance instructor this was going on for like 6 months, and she's like teaching us every move. We're mimicking her move. And no matter what, I could not be like on beat, even if I knew like the move, to the point where she was so frustrated that we were like less than a month out. She goes, okay, you're going to stand right here, right in the front. And she literally told me like, all I want you to do, she's like, look at my fingers and don't move until like I count, like go like this, like till 3. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I was kind of stressed out because I was like, this woman's going to kill me if I like am not in sync. I'm the only one out of sync with everybody. So that was like a stressful, really stressful experience for me. Also, I think like, I don't know if this, I don't want to say anything. I don't know if it relates to anything with personality, but I just really didn't like how there was a lot of like coming of age and these are the things that you need to learn. And sure, a lot of it was like great now as an adult, and I'm like going to interviews and things like that and knowing how to dress for those things, but it was very like judgmental. And so from that experience, I feel like I just needed to get so far opposite of what I did that I was like, I'm going to go play rugby now. Like I'm going to go get myself beat up after I just had to be a whole freaking like Princess Diaries or whatever. So I was just, I don't know. I think I just wanted to do the complete opposite. So soccer, rugby. I did track for a little while also. And I also did golf when I was younger as well. My dad was like, I don't know why you didn't stick with golf. Like, you were really good at golf. And I was like, it was boring. So I think I like more active sports, honestly. And yeah, I can't really necessarily attribute it to the fact more than my dad was like, everyone's going to play a sport, figure out what sport you want to play. And I'm glad now that he did that, because I don't know if I would have naturally just been like, I want to do this on my own. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just in case if Lauren missed it, one of the questions that's going to circle back around is because you and Kierstyn both spoke about like making time for people in a way, and I was speaking about how stereotypically INTJs don't like people, they hiss at people, they try to like just stay secluded. So my question was like, oh, what makes the three of you actually care about people? So that's something that definitely like to keep in mind when we come back around. But then obviously last but not least, Dario, only to continue to keep the pattern going. Once again, if Lauren is like the most affectionate one that I know, and Kierstyn is the most essentially like friendly, talkative one that I know, and like not even to flatter you, Dario, like you're the coolest INTJ that I know. Like
Yeah, no lies.
like this
I
man,
agree. Even though,
yeah,
like, you
this
don't
man
know me
has like all the tattoos, and
Uh-huh.
if I remember correctly, like he said, yeah, just go to my ISFP tattoo artist and just say like, yeah, give me a new one. Like you know what I mean? You didn't even plan which one you're gonna have for like the next 20 years first or anything like that. And then on top of that, you are a neuroscientist and a freaking shaman, like an actual shaman. And you're so casual with and nonchalant with all of these things. And I'm obviously in the type community and I'm an ENFJ, so I hear the gossip. And sometimes people are like, I don't think that he's an INTJ. I think that he's actually an ENFP. And it's like I'm sure that's something that you just shrug off and everything. I know that you identify as a creative subtype INTJ. Kierstyn also identifies as one, and I believe that Lauren is a normalizing. And then if we're going with Enneagram, I know that Kierstyn's SX5 is. Aren't you SX5 too, Dario, or do you know?
Yeah, with Wing 4.
Yeah,
me too.
Yeah. And then Lauren, I believe, is SP3, right?
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
And which one are you also contending with, just for the viewers who are like, oh, well, what else?
Well, I initially did think I was a 5 just because of my many rabbit holes that I go down. But probably a self-preservation 3. Very
Right.
focused on, not having vanity for vanity's sake.
Got you. But yeah, so Dario, with all of those things mentioned, I'm curious as to like, in what ways would you like, what got you into shamanism, like, which might be a stereotypically like NF thing, and then just all the different things that you kind of get yourself into. I know that you're pretty aware of like the ways you of all people, like how you diverge from the INTJ stereotype. So I'm very curious as to like how that is for you.
Well, first I'll preface by saying that when I was introduced to type, which was before the World Wide Web, through David Kierstyn's Please Understand Me and some friends, that I mean, I take the assessment and I look at the types and I'm like, oh, clearly I'm INTJ. And I was more stereotypically so when I was, say, 21 or 22 than I am today. So I think development has something to do with it. But also the way I was raised. And then when I was young, like as a kid, like I lived in Barbados in the Caribbean, which I feel is a very ESFP culture. I mean, it was only 3 years, but it was the 3 years that you start school and like get introduced to society and friends and all of that. But then over the years coming back to the US, it like got suppressed a little bit. And it was the chance then to go out and travel again. That I think woke up some of those things. So it's cultural background. My younger sister is ENFP. I'm single at the moment, but for 19 years I was not, and my partner is ENFP. So I know ENFP
That's the INTJ ENFP stereotype.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
real.
yeah,
Here.
Very stereotypical.
and I get it. Like I do get it. I think that the thing is, I remember that I made this choice when I don't know, it was like somewhere in my mid-20s, and I had a very good ENFP friend that I was living with. And I'm like, okay, like he has his issues and his problems and whatever, but it also seems like he's having fun all the time and people like him. And I was just exposed to the Enneagram then, and I sort of barely scored as a 1. And I'm like, one, like I don't want to be a 1. Like those people, like they're miserable because there's always something wrong with everything. And I'm like, I don't want that. And I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, I could see I could be a 5. And like 4 seems like a little bit neurotic for me. Like I don't want to be there. I'm like, wait, 7. 7's like have so much fun. And I'm not really a 7, but I like just embrace some of that. Then maybe, I mean, it would be a good thing. And so I really I embraced it. And I think as I got older, I found that things that I would have been hesitant to do when I was younger just became easier. And I also think I'm not somebody who's like even remotely on the autism spectrum. I'm not a highly sensitive person. Like I can go to like a rock concert with 50,000 people and I don't feel like overwhelmed or smothered or anything like that. Like
SC inferior.
no, I'm like, this is great. I live like that, like every weekend, all the time. No, but do I enjoy it while I'm there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I do suffer from like the usual. Like I can be very on until the battery gets down to about 3 to 5%. And all of a sudden, it's like you need to get out of here now. Like verbalization is shutting down. Like the brain is shutting down. Like it's time to go. I'm done. I'm done with it. But I really do think it's the people that surrounded me, some choices that I made culturally, living in different places, giving me sort of maybe a fearlessness a little bit. I have to attribute also my stepmother. Even though I only lived with her total probably 4 years, she was ESFP. And she constantly encouraged me to do things like be in the school play. I never got any good roles in the school play, but she made me really cool costumes. So if you remember, I knew I had the coolest sheep costume. Sure, like she did an
And
amazing
it was not a black sheep, was it?
No, it's very fluffy white sheep. I think what I appreciated too that both my mom and my stepmom were very aware that I wasn't like usual kids in my interests. So my stepmom would encourage me to do certain things like skiing. I mean, it's been quite a while. I've done double black diamond. That was probably my most challenging. I really loved, I did some martial arts, but it turns out in retrospect, it probably just wasn't the right martial art for me. Yeah, just anything that involves balance and is like an individual thing. My younger brother who's ISTP and my dad who's ISTJ and my grandfather who's INTP probably. They were all athletes and runners in college and high school. And so I think there's some of that. Like I enjoy running. I enjoy going to the beach. In terms of team sports, I really enjoyed most kendo and hockey. And I still have my hockey stick, and I feel very good about it. And I love them if you ask why, because you get to hit people in those sports. So I mean, it's not like hitting people in hockey is part of the game, but in practice it happens. Like it's okay. And I really and kendo, like you actually have a bamboo stick, and you're wearing armor, like pseudo armor, and that's just really fun. It's like frustrated or feeling some aggression or whatever, like just like hit somebody. I really enjoyed like all the times I still go to this thing. Sometimes it's like it's in LA, it's mock like medieval battle stuff. So they have medieval weapons that are like not gonna kill you, not gonna draw blood. But still, and it's just that level of maybe situational awareness and movement and all of that. And I feel like it's just a choice inside of me. It's like either I'm going to be on or I'm just going to watch from the side. But if I'm going to be on, I'm going to be on all the way. I really love the outdoors. I love the ocean. I'm not really a very good surfer, and what I did know, my body doesn't actually want to execute it anymore. Like I know how to leap up onto the board. My body just like doesn't do it. But I enjoy all of that. I'm not somebody to just lie in the sun randomly and get a suntan or something. But I really enjoy, probably of all the SE activities, or FI SE activities, is music. And that's just singing, songwriting, playing. And I'm not like a super fantastic player or anything like that. It's just like chords and extemporaneous. I wasn't always comfortable with extemporaneous, but I remember my grandmother, who is ESTJ, at the piano. She is just like very efficient. She's like, Dario, just learn a bunch of chords. And then like play by ear, just match the chords with what you're doing. And like, okay, I can actually do that. And whereas I cannot memorize other people's stuff to save my life. Like,
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
I play the keyboard and I just play by ear. If you put sheet music in front of me, it's going to take me about 2 years to get through the first line. But I hear the song, I just find the key, and then I know the chords that'll go with it, and then I start toying around with that. But yeah.
And I really like making my own stuff, but something meaningful to me personally, even if it's a little bit of a stretch. And I feel that there's always like a little bit of rebellion in me, which is part of my opposite type that I really enjoy. Like I really enjoy, like when I moved from teaching computing to anthropology and the social sciences, and of course I'm coming from an engineering background for the most part, and so I'm a little bit disdainful of the social sciences, although I do think anthropology is pretty cool as a very broad set of disciplines. And I'm just like, how can I make an impact as a teacher? And I'm thinking like experiential learning has been shown to have far more impact than lecture-based learning. So we're just going to do a bunch of experiential learning in these classes. And we're going to do field work. And it was a field work methods class. And it was big. And I just really enjoyed the subversive fact that I knew that, and I got feedback from students that whatever they would learn experientially would override sort of the BS that they might be learning in some other classes. And so it's not like didactic, like lecturing and whatever. And then it's less work for me. Like it's a super efficient way to teach, is actually just to create the conditions of learning. And so I really enjoyed that. And by then, you know, it's not like one day I'm like, oh, let me run this giant thing. But I've always been fascinated with games, designing games. I'm not huge into playing games, to be honest. I really like the designing part of it. I like choose your own adventure. I actually don't like choose your own adventures as a consumer. I just want to go. I just want to be taken through like interesting emotional experience, like whatever it is. But as a creator, on the other end, I really enjoy creating games and like creating cool experiences for people. And those always are going to involve some choice. And so that's, yeah. So I don't know. That's like a tour of my different interests. And I feel like though a lot of them are like stereotypical INTJ interests, though. I mean, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, I could actually see how that like links, but that's also because of how intentionally I've gone into like really trying to understand the nuances of all of that. So even like with when you just said like you like to like design the game and everything, and then present like the choices are. To me, it immediately struck me as like, oh, like the like INTJs can tend to be like the developer of the games and everything as well, but then you providing that experience for the person, I feel like something that all three of you were kind of expressing was like an SE aspiration of some sort, where it's like, oh, like this is my inferior function. And from my experience, people tend to either really try to run away from their inferior function or they jump in like head on. I know that for myself as an ENFJ, TI is my favorite function. It's not the function that's like my absolute strongest strength, but I know that ever since even before I knew about type, like when I was really strongly Christian, every Bible that I got was like an apologetic study Bible so that I can know the logic behind it and everything. And like, it's like I knew that this was my Achilles heel and I wanted to constantly like strengthen it. And now, like, every opportunity that I get to like sharpen my TI, I still work on that to integrate it. And it seems like you guys like kind of do the same thing. Like when it comes to like SC, like the experiences and like being in the moment and all of that. But then the NI is something that's just still very natural to you. And I guess the kind of last question that I would like present to any of you, like, you know, who would have the answer like readily, is with all of this said, what makes you still then feel or like, no, like at the end of the day, yes, I'm still an INTJ lane. Like, how do you use those functions, you know, on a day-to-day basis that let you like still not be like, oh wait, no, you know, I like to hit people with the hockey stick. Maybe I'm actually an ESFP, you know?
Okay, so just I think in the last year or so, in revisiting other types again, it's kind of made me laugh at myself about how much you mentioned how much I overplan stuff to the point where, again, like I don't recognize that this is not everybody's method of beginning something, that it's something that I look over. So like I'm already thinking like, well, everyone's starting point is this. So it's almost like I just toss that out the window and look at everything else. And then I'm laughing at myself because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I just spent 3 hours doing all this research and finding out like what is the best way to do this. And then I'm starting and doing it. And I'm just like, that's so NITE. Why was like, I'm like, why would I even think like it's just an interesting thing where I'll go from really being like, well, my FI is really strong. Like maybe I could have like higher FI and this. And then when I look back to see like where my starting point always is, I'm just like, why would I ever think I was any other type? I'll and Denzel's seen me do this all the time, like drive myself crazy and just be like, well, maybe I am INFP or maybe I am like this. And I think even the other day, I don't know what, randomly, I was like, could I be an ENFP? And then I was like, no, there's no way. But it's just funny how I think that, at least in my experience, the tendency to overlook the dominant function for me. And I think I feel like I maybe don't have as good of a grasp possibly as like you, Lauren, or Dario. Like I didn't go through Personality Hacker, so I feel like maybe I don't have as great of a grasp as understanding when I'm using NI, but like the planning thing is just, it's really bad. Like it's actually bad, I find, where I think that's where like the SE thing for me is like really trying to break that and really putting in action, because it's an interesting thing where like I feel like, and I'm assuming this might be a common experience for INTJs, but like I feel like it's a weird thing where like executive function pieces you can be really strong at with like building the plan, doing something that's like, oh, this is gonna work, but then having a really hard time with like the initiating and like doing the thing. And wanting it to be like perfect before you can start is an issue for me. And yesterday I laughed at myself because my friend and I were on the phone. Somehow we got into talking about like my 30th birthday, which is like a little less than 2 years from now. But I was already thinking of all these plans and ideas of, I was like, well, I could do this or do that. But I was like, remember on my 24th, this happened when I brought everybody together. So I'm a little bit nervous about doing that for my 30th, even though typically I feel like for 30th, I should probably try to get everyone together. And I was really just going into the details, like had thought all this stuff through. And she was like, you don't need to decide right now. Like turn 29 first. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh. She was like, yeah, you have plenty of time to think about 30. How about you think about 29? I was like, well, I already figured that out. So I was like, I'm really just trying to figure out, like, it would be best to just do something small, or if I should actually, and I was just like, wow, I spent a lot of time really thinking about that I'm just like, that was such a waste of, like, now I'm like, that was such a waste of time. Why did I do that? And then I'm just
Mind
like,
you, she does this with a lot of things.
I believe
yeah.
it.
Constant thing I'm telling you, like, you don't have to decide that right now. You don't have to think about that right now. Just be here.
And so it's stuff like that, I think, where my friends or whatever reflect back to me, or I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again. And then I'm just like, okay, I guess that was NI right there. Things like that. Yeah.
And on top of that, the other aspect of NI is a lot, like, it has to do with like symbolism and archetypes and everything. And kind of like what you said about Dario and Lauren, like, you know, I wouldn't say that you're like quote unquote new to type, but yeah, you know, you didn't go through a course, you know, like you had to, you were kind of like self-taught and then things of that nature. But I remember, like, when I would like bring up archetypes to you, you didn't know what that word meant necessarily. And so before I explained it, you were just, you expressed some sort of like about it. But then in the following days, I was giving you examples of how you're constantly assessing like archetypes and using archetypes. You're like, oh, that's what that word is. And I'm like, yeah. And so
And now I'm like obsessed.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that's definitely like another big way. You know, obviously, like, there's several more, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I don't well, like, despite going through courses, that I don't well describe NI. And I think for me, it's because it's probably more of the water and I'm the fish. And I say that because where I tend to see it in myself is actually in contrast. It's an observation of other people and my sometimes critique of other people. Like, I would say I've never been the INTJ that's like the strategist, like the Queen's Gambit, the key chess player that's run all of these simulations. And but for me, it's been like, I critique people for not being conscientious enough. Like, it just seems obvious to me that you would think through something more thoroughly or plan it a little better. Like, there's definitely an optimal way of doing that, and that was the worst way of doing it. And that's kind of maybe like the low. Yeah, like,
yeah.
that might be like,
she's like, this is not efficient.
exactly. I mean, I'll do it through gritted teeth. Like, people only learn in their own time and in their own shortcomings, but it's like, that's definitely gonna fail.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I think it honestly comes out most prominently that way. But I also tend to think of things in terms of like probability, trajectory, similar to Kierstyn. I've ran through every single personality type and graded myself against it. I'm constantly kind of doing that. And to be honest, like, this is the lack of TI in me. I've kind of tossed it aside and been like, great, the closer I can get to TI, the better. Like, I like that I can sort of reach closer to it, but it does feel sometimes out of reach. So yeah, that's more of a succinct answer, but I do think in terms of trajectories and probabilities, spectrums, and then my critiques of others.
For sure. And then I think that also, you know, just to tag on to that, like, Lauren is constantly speaking about concepts. And kind of like what Kierstyn said, like, I remember, and I'm going to put this like up in the video for people to see it, but I'm never going to forget, like, there was like a post on your Instagram where like you came across a tree that had fallen.
Yeah, I never posted it on Instagram, but I sent it to you.
Yeah, you did. That's right. You sent it to me. Whoop, my bad. Let me not. Would you care if I?
No.
As an example? Yeah. So you were coming. Well, do you want to explain what that was? Actually.
I don't even fully remember. All I remember is that there was a tree in the forest that fell, and it was a bridge. It acted as a bridge, in my opinion, between like two different spaces. And so it got me thinking about how, like, maybe it's not so unhealthy to be like uprooted or to sort of deviate from what has historically rooted you down. And on the surface, it might seem morbid and sad to watch this tree's demise, but is it really a demise if it's bridging these two spaces? And how beautiful it is to like sort of traverse two very different terraces, or terrains, I should say. So
Right.
yeah, I guess that was it.
To me, that was like when you didn't even post that on Instagram, like you said. And I think that I remember that now because I remember that we were talking about like how your Instagram doesn't give INTJ, but then that's you don't post stuff like this where it's like you just sent it to me privately, like, oh, I just asked
Yeah.
her, like, oh, how was your day? And it's like, oh, my day was cool, and then just casually threw that picture in there and I thought, and I'm like, what the heck? This is the most NI Dom SE thing. Like, I feel like stereotypically an ESFP
Yeah.
would be, oh, look, a tree, let's climb it. Or like, let's walk through. But then Lauren's walking through the forest and sees a tree. He's like, oh, wow, uprootedness. And I feel like that's, again, like a very like INTJ, quote unquote, type of way of like looking at things. And then speaking of morbid, how could we forget this? You already know what I'm going to bring up.
I'm ready.
You're not ready. What's on your back, Lauren?
Oh yeah. My tattoo is literally Memento Mori, and it took me 3 years to design it. It's not a Dario Nardi tattoo. It's not it was very well thought out. But just to remember that you're human, remember that you will die one day. And it's very symbolic. It has like an hourglass, a lotus flower, obviously a skull to represent death, but the lotus flower to symbolize like both birth and death. And just like an hourglass can be turned upside down, death can lead to life and it can be renewed. So it's both and. Love that. Yeah. And I'm also wearing, I just realized too, a necklace that's Lilith, the woman that was banned from the garden. So that's very symbolic because I'm really trying to tap into my disagreeableness, actually, and be in touch with my anger more. So it's like the archetype for me to remember that. So I guess there are a few archetypes and symbols in my life. That too.
Wow. Nice. Nice. That's great. And then I guess last but not least, Dario.
Yeah, just looking at the function stack and how it's usually described in books or on Reddit or whatever, I just read through those and I'm like, for NI or TE in particular, I'm just like, yes, 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 yes. I'm always thinking about, and not in any neurotic way, like it's just a practical thing. Like I'm going to travel, like what contingency plans do I need in place? What is the likelihood of certain things happening? I know one of my neighbors here, and he was saying, I don't know, he was saying something about the policy for Arizona or whatever. And he's like, but how could they even, how do we know? I said, it's like, oh, well, my issue with the policy is they've been doing it is not effective. And he's like, but how can you know when something is effective? And I'm like, what are you, like, retarded? Like, how? Like, I don't know. You set milestones and goals, realistic or not. Like, you measure progress. If you don't reach that, it was not effective. Simple as that. I didn't say that, but in a very nice way. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's how it works. A lot of the NI things. So, yeah, I don't know what to do. Like, let me just sleep on it. And
put it, as Joel says, put it in your NI and then smoke it.
Like if I know I'm going to do something, like for example, when I was in graduate school, it was one of the first times I had a chance to play music, like in a bar kind of place, and I really had to prepare myself beforehand, and I want to be prepared emotionally as well as mentally. So it's like that process in the days beforehand of sort of getting in touch with how I need to be when I get there. And I sort of trust my unconscious will provide for me what I need, provided I'm just like jumping in the deep end to do that in order to be different, like archetypally to tap into an archetype. And yeah, just going down like the functions and I'm very much, if you ask me, what am I doing 6 to 12 months from now? I might say something like, well, I'm not really sure. But actually, if you push me on it, I'm like, oh, well, probably A and maybe B. And then there's like these 5 other things that I could be doing. And I tend to overestimate, or I tend to say, oh, something's going to take a month and it's going to take 3 months. Like, is always underestimating. But I actually do think about those things, and then the shamanism and so on also is just a different side of NI.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I want to add one thing, that when I was younger, and certainly still when it's a new place I'm traveling to, I do research beforehand so that I don't go into it blind. And then I also need to remind myself that there's no point in planning everything,
You
because
hear that, Kierstyn?
I won't feel like it that day. Or as long as I have background knowledge and I've traveled to a lot of different places, then I'm like, I'm going to be fine. Like, I can just ask somebody. Like, I can just decide. And you never know what's going to happen. Like, when I went to the Great Barrier Reef, I mean, I set up with my aunt, who's a travel agent, to like make sure I can get me there. And I'm like, oh, I'll probably do like some snorkeling. And I get there, and the gal is like, and I got there early, and she's like, oh, do you want to do scuba diving? And I'm like, I'm not scuba certified. And she's like, oh, that's okay. Like, this is Australia. Like, all you need is a 15-minute training, and you'll be ready to go.
Australia, where all of the scary monsters and stuff are, you just need 15 minutes of training. Got it.
Yeah, the jellyfish
and
the size of your fingernail could kill you, but
yeah. But it is like, I love the ocean, and I'm very comfortable with the ocean, and it was a beautiful day. And then it was just really funny. She was like, well, actually, to be honest, there are 2 trainings, and they're for a group of Koreans and a group of Japanese. So she's like, I don't know, honestly, if they're going to be in English. And I'm like, I'll take the Japanese group. Mochiron Nihongo shaberu. So I'm like, I think I could do it. So I took my 15-minute training in Japanese. And it was actually an amazing scuba diving experience.
Wow.
And it's just like, and the moment she said that, I'm like, well, it's not that it's meant to be. Like, I don't believe in magical thinking, but like, just being open to what happens, knowing from experience that probably everything is going to be fine.
Wow.
Just like have a certain amount of preparation beforehand. Like, don't go in completely blind.
Sure.
Like, give it a little bit of time.
Unless you're ENFP.
yeah.
ENFP is like, yeah, we're just going.
Yeah.
And that's even when I hiked the Grand Canyon, that was, in retrospect, not well prepared. We had an amazing time. So
and you lived.
And I lived to tell the tale. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's just looking at the functions, and like looking back on SE, I just got a lot of exposure to SE as a kid. And then as a teenager, from like maybe 11 to 24, I didn't get much of it. And then I just sort of started to go back to it again, and had those resources from being a kid. And then I haven't really talked about emotions, but that's always something, INTJs are working on. And that's where they're working on us. I don't know. I felt an acting class helped a lot with that. Relationships help a lot with that. And FI is torturous, and it also is what makes us humans. So that we're having.
Lauren knows a lot about that. She once said, "Yeah, I eat pain for breakfast."
I resonated with that. I remember that.
Okay, I don't get. People had blank stares. I was like, "Oh, just me? Okay."
No, I know this ENFP, and he broke up with his longtime girlfriend, and he's like absolutely crushed, and he's literally just like hibernating for 5 or 6 weeks. And I'm like, dude, I have had in my life a couple of really horrible breakups, and the show must go on. The very next day, like, I need to get up and like live life. That's the best way to get over something, is to get back in the game. And I'm like, and I'm saying it nicely, but I'm like, being mopey is like, like mopey NFP, like, is not going to help, man. Yeah.
Everybody who was typing Dario or something else at the beginning of the video now is like scratching their pad.
Exactly. No magical thinking.
And I could be really critical at times. Like, I have that capacity, but I don't do that. And people wonder, like, oh, but you're so nice and this and that. I'm like, well, I keep looking for like the positive reframe. And if I didn't look for the positive reframe, I'd be an asshole. but is like I would not be pleasant, and I don't want to be unpleasant because that's
Yeah.
not fun for me or anybody else.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah. And my relationships that do matter to me.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely hear that.
It's just been burning in the back of my head as I've been listening to Dario. And it was one of the things I was like, oh, I should have mentioned this too as a hobby, I guess, of mine. I always forget the things I like to do, but I love traveling. I don't know how I did not mention that. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been to so many different countries and I
Definitely
travel
does.
all the time. And it's
Yes.
actually, I say this because I think it actually might be a pattern for INTJs. My dad lived in Japan. Like, he also loved traveling as well. And I'm pretty sure he's normalizing INTJ. And so I'm like, after Dario said that, I was like, wait, like, I have to mention this just in case there's anybody else out there watching that might actually be an INTJ that might think they're something else, maybe with higher SE or whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a thing. She's not just saying that. She travels a lot. And she does not mind just staying in a cabin by herself in the middle of, where was that? Like,
I was in Norway, and similar to Dario, I really did try to plan a lot out, but of course, the day that I go, there's like a big blizzard where I'm staying. The telephone poles blow out. There's no Wi-Fi. Now, it's funny because my whole intention behind the trip was to get away from everybody. And I was like, I'm going to turn my phone off. I was like, I don't want to like watch any TV. I don't want to I just want to read my books, journal, do stuff like that. And it was funny because I was like, wow, did I manifest this? Because literally the one area that I'm staying in, she's like, this has never happened. And yeah, there's no connection to Wi-Fi. So we had to come up with like a meeting time for her to come to take me to like this excursion I was going on the next day. Like, I was doing dog sledding the next day. So she's like, okay, I'll meet at this time. But it was the funniest thing because I had no way to contact my parents. I was actually like, oh, I hope they don't think like that's something happened to me, because I'm like, I'm going to this Airbnb, and I told them when I landed, never told them when I got there. So that I was like, oops, but it was fine. And everything worked out amazing. And I was kind of laughing because I was like, wow, I really planned for all this and none of that can't happen because I have no internet. I have so yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much to all three of you for doing this video with me and everything. I really appreciate it. I forgot to say at the beginning, but I think I probably told each of you at some point many times. INTJ is my personal favorite type. And so it was cool to just, sit down with all of you and then just talk about like these nuances of how an INTJ can show up. And I think that people who watch this video will be able to better identify INTJs in their life, or at least hold more space for if somebody might be an INTJ and everything. And I remember I had friends who were on INTJ panels before that when they hopped off the panel, then they literally said, I was like, why didn't you speak up at this part? And they're like, well, it seemed like all of the other INTJs were saying this, so I didn't want to I didn't want to be like the dissenting voice. And I guess this maybe can hopefully open up a space for you know what? I'm still confidently INTJ, but yes, I do like to actually talk to people, and I do actually like to do this and boom, boom. And sure, it doesn't mean that you talk until literally the night, night shows up and everything, but there's just more to being a human overall. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I want this series to show, how the function stack is still the function stack. So people should not get it twisted and really go a whole different way and still think they're INTJ, but at the same time, they shouldn't feel like they either have to be a certain stereotype as well to be an INTJ of that sort. So thank y'all once again for joining. Thanks to everyone for also taking the time to watch. Make sure to leave in the comments, questions, all of that, and I'll definitely be getting back to you. Done. Thank you for taking the time to watch that video. And if you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe. It actually really helps out my channel a lot, so that more people who actually care about what I want to say can actually find me a lot more easier. Also, if you did enjoy it, then maybe you'll enjoy a lot of my other content as well. So be sure to check out some of my playlists where you'll be able to find a lot of my older videos and older content. And last but not least, if you would like any profiling sessions or coaching sessions, be sure to check out denzelmensah.com, where you'll be able to book me and you'll see the rest of my services. But thanks again and have a great day.